Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, is back, and he is launching a sequel to his 2016 presidential campaign. The senator announced his 2020 news early this morning in an email to supporters, along with this video message.
Hi, I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president. We are running against a president who is a pathological liar, a fraud, a racist, a sexist, a xenophobe, and someone who is undermining American democracy as he leads us in an authoritarian direction. I am running for president because now more than ever, we need leadership that brings us together, not divides us up.
Shortly after the news broke, the 77-year-old senator appeared on CBS News and was asked why this time would be different than the last one. This is what he said.
What's going to be different this time?
We're going to win. We are going to also launch what I think is unprecedented in modern American history, and that is a grassroots movement, John, to lay the groundwork for transforming the economic and political life of this country. That's what's different.
Sanders now joins an already crowded and diverse field of 10 Democratic candidates. That number will probably grow some more. That's something he clearly didn't face in 2016. A majority of Democrats already seeking the nomination have fanned out across the country, touting popular progressive messages like universal health care, raising the minimum wage, and combating climate change. Sanders, running second in the polls right now behind Joe Biden, remains a force to be reckoned with, though. Within hours of his announcement, he raised more than $3 million from donors. For more, I'm joined by Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today, former New York Congressman Joe Crowley, and Ben Jealous, former national president and CEO of the NAACP. He was a supporter of Bernie Sanders back in 2016. Curious if he's on board for the second one. Well, why don't we start with that? Ben Jealous, I remember talking to you in 2016. You were one of his surrogates. That's the word we use. Are you going to be a Sanders supporter in 2020?
You know, I signed up in New Hampshire in 2016. This year, I ran for governor of our state, and as the standard bearer for our party in our state, in that respect, I've got to look and see, to endorse when we get close to the Maryland primary. We want to make sure that Maryland matters. With that said, as you know, I'm a good friend. I'm a big fan of Bernie, and he's going to be a real force. He's exactly where the voters are on health, on education, on jobs. And he's showing that he can raise real money and, frankly, do it from the people of the country in probably the smallest denominations of anybody. So I think everybody should take it very, very seriously this time.
All right. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of help from some of his rivals in your own campaign. That might have been, you want to be gracious about that, at least. So no endorsement now.
I mean, look, Corey and I go back. We're both Black Rhodes Scholars. We go back a long way. Kamala I've known for 15 years. Liz Warren and I fought to pass the CFPB together. Great friends, great friends. But we have to, right now, when you look at Bernie rolling out, he is absolutely formidable. And it starts with his message. What makes Bernie unique is that he has been courageous on these issues for a very long time. And quite frankly, you've seen, I think, candidates across the party move towards him. He clearly is where the voters are.
All right. Well, Susan, let me ask you, one of the questions I've got with Sanders is being debated right now is, look, in 2016, he was the only alternative in most of those primaries to Hillary Clinton. Anybody who didn't want Hillary Clinton got to vote for Bernie Sanders. So you probably got a lot of folks who maybe didn't like him particularly. They just didn't like Hillary Clinton. So the conventional wisdom is, hey, crowded field, a lot of other choices in 2020. That works against him. The other way I look at that, though, is crowded field 2016. Look at the Republican race. Donald Trump could win primaries with 30% of the vote, 35% of the vote. Can Sanders turn around and do that in the Democratic race?
Well, it's possible, and he starts out with a base of support. He starts out with phenomenal fundraising ability. But, one thing that strikes me, Republicans often choose the person who came in second in the previous election. You got a lot of examples of that. I was trying to think today of examples of Democrats who came in second for the nomination who got it then the next time around. And the only one I could think of is Hillary Clinton, because I think Democrats like to fall in love with somebody new. And that is not going to be Bernie Sanders this time. This is going to be one of the 10 other people who have not run for office before, who are a generation younger than Bernie Sanders and who espouse pretty similar political views.
Well, yeah, Joe Crowley.
I think it's kind of creative to make Bernie the Clinton in this race. I mean, I would just point that out. That's a stretch.
Well, let me take Joe Crowley's temperature on this, because it seems certainly in 2016 we saw this. There was a lot of reluctance, at the very least, on what you the part of what you would call the Democratic establishment to support the Sanders campaign. How much reluctance, or even if the words, how much resistance is there going to be from those same quarters towards him in 2020?
Well, Steve, I have news for you tonight. Bernie Sanders is running for president of the United States. Bernie's been running ever since he lost, and there's no doubt about that. I do think there was a great deal of resistance. Obviously, I think the relationship that Clinton had built, certainly in New York, as the senator from New York, those relationships were there. But as the first lady, and again as the former Secretary of State, there had been a lot of touch to the Clintons, certainly that benefited her. But Bernie is formidable. There's no question about it. Bernie has you saw with the numbers that he's raised just in a few hours, the millions of dollars of grassroots that he has out there. I think maybe even more so with all these Democrats running, it kind of is going to stand out that Bernie is still an independent, engaged in a Democratic primary. And I do think there are some new faces here that when they get more exposure, I think that may drown out a bit of the Bernie effect.
Is he somebody you could support?
Look, I could support. I disagree with Bernie on a number of issues, but overall, the core values that Bernie has are similar to my core values. So yes, I could. I do think, though, that, and I think it's interesting that Ben has mentioned that he's not quite yet there, although very close to Bernie, and that there are nuances in this race.
Bernie hasn't asked. I mean, to be clear, Steve asked me, but Bernie hasn't asked me.
I appreciate that.
Just to be clear.
I guess what I'm saying, though, is that there are a lot of folks that Ben has relationship with, that we all have relationships with. I'm not prepared to say tonight who I would support either, but I do think that this field, this very crowded, very competent field, is something that's going to be very interesting to watch.
One of the other, when you look at Sanders in any potential path to the nomination, obviously nearly won Iowa in 2016, won New Hampshire in 2016. Overall, though, if you look at all those primaries, Hillary Clinton defeated Sanders. She got 16 million votes across all the primary. Sanders about 3 million fewer than that. It was June 14th when Clinton became the presumptive nominee. She won California, Florida, New York, a lot of the big states. Here's the interesting stat, though. While both Clinton and Sanders received almost the same share of the vote when it came to white voters, it was African-American voters where Clinton absolutely clobbered Sanders. Look at that, a 3-to-1 margin with black voters. You saw that's how she pounded him in South Carolina, across the South, states with heavy black populations. That's where she was really able to run up the score. Ben Jealous, we talked so much about this in 2016. Sure. Bernie Sanders.
Well, don't forget that Bernie won Michigan, which has a big black
right. Okay. He narrowly won Michigan, but overall, you can't deny the pattern there. 75%, 23% across all primaries among black voters. Why will that be different this time around?
Then if you look at black voters under 30, if you look at black voters under 30, Bernie won them. You look at black men under 50, most places, Bernie won them. The black community was getting to know Bernie Sanders. He's from Vermont. You're just like Howard Dean. You really don't know this guy. He's not where we are. That was 4 years ago. And now folks have gotten to know him. And what they see is that he's absolutely consistent on education, on health care, on the environment, on jobs. We got teachers going out on strike in West Virginia. We got teachers about to go out on strike in Oakland, California. There's not a teacher out there who doesn't know that when it comes to the kitchen table issues, Bernie Sanders stands with them. And so that's what makes him so powerful, is that he's terribly consistent. His brand has become much more familiar across this country, and people know that when it comes to their kitchen table issues, he's in their corner every time.
Susan, very quickly, I saw comments from the president today, Donald Trump. He clearly was trying to reopen those wounds in the Democratic Party from 2016, talking about Bernie Sanders. He says getting a raw deal. The president there, and I imagine Republicans more broadly speaking, maybe have some hope that you'll see some of that repeat of what you had there in 2016, where Bernie and his supporters versus the rest of the party.
Well, you may, although you've got to say he lost the nomination last time. He won the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has moved to the left since 2016. And the only question is how far left did they run? That's where you see the divisions.
All right, Susan Page, Joe Crowley, Ben Jealous, day one of the Bernie 2020 campaign. A lot to talk about tonight. There will be a lot to talk about going forward. I appreciate all of you being with us tonight.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.